I've been thinking about something that used to feel like bad luck. Then it started to feel like coincidence, and then eventually it started to feel like a pattern you're not supposed to notice. It's the way the finish line keeps moving further away whenever you get anywhere close to it. You spend your 20s thinking, all right, just get the experience. Pay your dues, learn the systems, and keep your head down. In your 30s, it becomes, all right, let's just get promoted. Get the title, get the raise, get a bit of breathing room. But in your 40s, it shifts again. Now it's just get the house paid down. Just get the kids through school. Just stabilize things. And somewhere in there, you're told there's a magical endpoint at the end of the road where everything finally relaxes. The retirement years, the payoff, the calm after the storm. At least that's the story. What I've noticed, sitting in offices for longer than I care to admit, is that just when you get close to one of those finally moments, something changes the rules. Not always in a dramatic, conspiracy theory way. More like a quiet administrative adjustment that nobody announces. The pension plan gets restructured. The retirement age gets, reviewed. The cost of living gets recalculated. The target shifts a few more years down the road, and everyone nods like that's just how calendars work. I remember when 65 wasn't just a number. It was a promise. Not a great promise, mind you, but a consistent one. You do your time, you get your gold watch, you shuffle off to the modest pension with some dignity intact. Now the conversation is more like, well, realistically, people are healthier longer, so maybe 67. Maybe 70. Maybe we'll just see how you're doing at 73 and we'll go from there. And I can't help but notice now that when a company asks, how are you doing? It seems more like they're asking, are you still useful? Here's the part that really gets under my skin, though. It's not one big betrayal. It's 1,000 small adjustments that always seem to go in the same direction. A little later retirement here, a little higher contribution there, a little less security, a little more flexibility, which is usually code for you absorb the risk. You're not imagining it. It's not paranoia, it's a pattern, and it's pattern recognition. The system doesn't collapse, it just slowly becomes more efficient at extracting your time. And while all that's happening, life doesn't pause politely in the background. It keeps throwing its usual chaos at you. Car breaks down, someone gets sick, the market dips, company restructures, departments get realigned, which is corporate language for your job now includes the jobs of 2 other people. But don't worry, we've updated the mission statement, so we're all good. Every time you think you've finally reached a stable patch, something shifts the ground again. It's like building a house on quicksand that occasionally sinks deeper when, management feels optimistic. Now, I want to be careful here, because this isn't about claiming there's some grand villain twirling a mustache in the boardroom somewhere. It's more boring than that. It's systems optimizing themselves. It's institutions protecting their own continuity. It's governments dealing with math that doesn't care about your feelings. It's corporations doing what corporations do when nobody is watching closely enough. The result, though, for a person inside the system, it's always the same. The goalpost keeps moving. After a while, you stop celebrating the milestones the way you used to because some part of you starts wondering how long they'll last before they quietly get redefined again. You finally pay off a chunk of debt and the interest rates shift. You finally hit a savings target and inflation eats half of it. You finally reach a senior role and suddenly that role is being restructured into a more agile function, which usually means more responsibility and less authority, like a joke that gets less funny every year, but it's still technically a joke. At some point, if you're paying attention, you start asking a slightly uncomfortable question. Not how do I move up, but why does moving up never actually feel like arriving anywhere? Because once you see the moving goalpost clearly, you can't really unsee it. And that's usually the moment people either double down on the game or start wondering if there's another field entirely to play on. Now, I'm not going to pretend there's a magical escape hatch where you just step out of the 9 to 5 and everything becomes sunsets and passive income. That version of the story is just another kind of marketing. But what I will say, based on watching a lot of careers from the inside of the machine, is that there are more exits than most people are taught to even notice. The first shift isn't dramatic, it's structural. It's realizing that trading your time directly for money is the default setting, not the only setting. Most people never question that initial assumption because it's reinforced daily with clocks and schedules, payroll cycles, and performance reviews. But once you question it, even a little, the rest of the architecture becomes visible. Contract work instead of permanent dependency, remote consulting instead of a fixed location, small digital products instead of large institutional output, niche experience instead of general availability, even just lowering your fixed cost lifestyle so that you're not permanently trapped at a certain income threshold changes the geometry of the whole thing. None of this is instant freedom, though. It's more like loosening bolts on a structure you've been told was welded shut. And here's the part that tends to get missed in the panic or the excitement, depending on your personality. The real prison isn't the job itself. It's the lack of options. When you only have one income stream, one employer, one system, then every change in that system feels like a threat. When you have 2 or 3 smaller streams, even modest ones, the same changes feel like weather. Inconvenient, sometimes annoying, but really not life-defining. I've watched people build that second layer quietly, almost experimentally. A bit of consulting on the side, a small digital service, a skill that can be rented out rather than sold. It doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but internally, it changes how they sit in meetings. There's less fear in the background, less of that subtle compliance that comes from knowing you can't really say no. And ironically, that's often when people start doing better work anyway. Now, about the age question, the one nobody likes to say out loud. If retirement keeps getting pushed further out, what exactly are we planning our lives around? Because if the endpoint keeps moving, then anchoring your entire existence to that endpoint starts to look less like planning and more like gambling. A more rational approach is to assume the finish line is not guaranteed and design your life so that partial independence shows up earlier in pieces. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough so that your time becomes less rented and more owned by you. That might mean working fewer hours before it means quitting entirely. It might mean replacing a portion of income before replacing all of it. It might mean building skills that survive outside a single employer's ecosystem. None of this removes uncertainty, though. It just reduces how dependent you are on one version of the future staying intact. And that brings me to the most underrated realization in all of this. You don't actually need the system to collapse for your relationship with it to change. You just need to stop treating it like it's the only game in town. Once that happens, the moving goalpost stops being a trap and starts being a signal. It tells you where not to anchor your identity. It shows you where flexibility matters more than loyalty. It quietly points out that predictability was always partially an illusion, just one that worked well enough to keep everyone showing up on Monday morning. So, can you get out of the 9 to 5 trap? Not in the movie sense, not in the single decisive leap where everything snaps into place and you never look back. But in the practical sense, yes. Gradually, structurally, by reducing dependency, increasing optionality, and refusing to build your entire future on a finish line that keeps getting repainted and pushed further down the road. And maybe the honest version of, freedom here isn't escaping work entirely. It's reaching a point where Work stops feeling like something that can be rewritten under your feet without your consent. Because once you get there, the goalpost can move all it wants. You're no longer playing a game where that matters in the same way. As always, this has been Over 40 with Duff. If you've enjoyed today's video, please like, follow, and share. But better yet, subscribe. It really helps out the channel. So until next time, keep asking yourself, if not now, when?